Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome to another edition of E-Heroes. Today's E-Hero is Jon Lovgren, and we're just going to go totally unscripted. I mean, granted, most of these episodes are unscripted. I don't know the questions until they happen. But, you know, Jon's very unique in his approach, and he's got these great books that we're going to talk about. But I think I think what you're going to get out of this episode is everything that you do is how you approach it. So, it's all going to come back to you. So, Jon, welcome and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. And it's an honor and a privilege to be on E-Heroes, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Now, you're in Hawaii. I'm in Pennsylvania. There's a 6-hour time difference. We're recording this at 11 o'clock my time. So you got up awfully early to be on this podcast.
Yeah, it's 5 a.m. at this point. The sun's not up yet. So good morning. At least we're both in the morning.
That's dedication when you get up before the sun just to be on this podcast. So yeah. Everybody listening, do what Jon does. So Jon, being in Hawaii, what differentiates you kind of from what everybody else is doing on the mainland?
Well, I guess I got to Hawaii about 10 years ago and fell in love with the culture, the island. I'm on the big island. And I'd heard about this practice called oponopono back in, 15 years ago or so. And I started playing around with it. And so as I was researching it in 2011, I realized that it was actually working for me. And I had an opportunity to move to Hawaii. My job allowed it as long as I worked the customer time. So early mornings for me, but I wanted to understand Ho'oponopono at a deeper level as far as how it comes through from the Hawaiians, because it is so powerful. It's as simple as I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And it's just, the stories that I have and the stuff I've seen and the stuff I've experienced in my own life has just shown me over and over again how, like I say in the magic words, miracles become expectations. We just learn to understand that we're 100% responsible for ourselves, for everything in our lives.
Right. And
so when we take blame out of the picture, we start changing the way we think and the way we react or respond.
Right. And this culture right now of blaming others just seems to be, that's its own pandemic, I think. Forget about the virus that's out there. The whole blame game it really needs to stop.
Yeah.
And refocusing on that word that Ho'oponopono is very powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of people don't understand it very very deeply, and so hence the books to explain that. But the hardest part of it is remembering to say it. And I always tell people, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. It's a mantra, if you will, or a prayer, right? And so anytime you get a little just start saying it. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Just over and over in your head. And I encourage people to say it all the time, whether you need it or don't need it, but just get it to the point where it becomes second nature. So you're in a situation that's uncomfortable. If you start saying Ho'oponopono and take a couple deep breaths, you're more apt to respond rather than react. And in my experience and watching in my own life, when we react, we tend to go down that negative spiral. Into the low vibration energies and anger and fear and frustration. When we respond, we tend to stay more optimistic and, lighter, if you will.
Right. So for me, writing these sarcasm books, dealing with scammers and lousy customer service, I'm not sure I want to say I'm sorry to them.
Well, you're not saying it to them. That's the confusion, right? It's always and only to self.
Yeah.
But and I want to thank you for doing those, because I don't know if people realize that if you read between the lines, so to speak, it shows me that you actually have a really big heart and that you really care about what's going on in the world for people. And, I've often heard that one of the best ways we learn is through humor.
Yeah.
And so as you found out and you're hearing from responses, and I see them on Facebook at times, that, you know, people are actually using your experience to help them get through it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I might have a curmudgeon attitude on social media, but you know, the people that know me, the people that hire me, they know that I have their back. I always protect them. I'm there for them. And a lot of people have called me the last Boy Scout because, you know, just the ethics that I stick behind, and the things that I do to protect my clients. It's just, you don't find that anymore. But it's just getting past that sarcasm that some people just can't deal with.
Right. But, you know, and that's kind of points back to me to the whole oponopono piece, right? For everybody. I used to do a lot of workshops here on the island, and I was doing one time, and I just spoke freely, and, you know, not talking like a sailor necessarily, but I would swear, depending on the circumstances, off and on. And after one of the workshops, a gal came up to me and she said, you know, that was really good, but I feel like I missed a lot of it because every time you said a swear word, I didn't hear what came after that. Can you please stop swearing? And my go-to is, hey, you know what? Why does that offend you? Because it's not about me.
Right.
It's really, why does that offend you? But I stopped myself and I took it to heart. So it took me probably, it's still a struggle sometimes, but, you know, the question was asked to me, who are you speaking to? Who's your audience? And we came out, well, everyone. Well, then if you're going to reach everyone, it'd probably be a good idea if you cut that out. So, so I did. And it was interesting to me how hard it was to do at first. You know, it's better now after practice, but, you know, the message is too, in my opinion, too powerful and too important to have any of it missed because I'm being a smartass or something.
Well, you know, and when you refocus your message to the people that really need to hear it, you're going to get a better response. You're going to get people that actually want to buy your books or read your message or listen to you. Whereas if you just throw that message out to the universe, you're going to get a lot of people who are going to go, yeah, when's this over? Or, you know, you know, this guy's out of his mind, or, you know, and then they just want to give you negative feedback, and you're like, you know, do I really want to do this anymore if I'm going to get negative feedback from these people? And they weren't your clients to begin, or they weren't your demographic to begin with. So
but you know, and that's the yeah, I'm not in love with social media either, but it is what it is, and you know, it's a good platform. It just got abused, and you know, the people that own it are doing the same. But one of my mentors, when I published the first book, he reminded me, he said, yeah, you're probably going to get some bad reviews of people that don't like it or some kind of whatever. Just ignore it, you know. And then it comes back to, are you familiar with the 4 agreements? Yeah, so that's another huge part of it. You combine the whole oponopono and the 4 agreements, and you're like unstoppable if you start to live in that philosophy, if you will.
So let's talk about your first book. That was The Magic Words?
The Magic Words is the first book.
And what prompted you to write that?
Well, you know, I wanted to be a writer like 25 years ago. I decided to write a book. And back then it was going to be called Freedom from the Bondage of Self. And so I was in and out of college, took some English courses. And, you know, I learned that if you're going to write anything, you have to have an outline. You have to do it this way and you have to do it that way. And so I had this fancy outline, and I had Microsoft OneNote with 48 tabs and 64 pages in each tab, and couldn't keep track. I finally got another program that I could set it up so it looked like the pages of the book. And it's like, okay, I'm creating the book and watching it happen rather than just throwing in a Word document.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I wrote an article for a friend of mine and sent it to an editor to get it cleaned up. And then I asked her, please set a date, because without a date, I probably, nothing gets done. So she set a date of January 17. I think it was 19. I published it on Christmas Day. Prior to that, I was like, oh shoot, dude, I'm still in the old childhood things that Christmas break is a long time away, but it's only a couple of weeks and I haven't really started. So I wrote that book in about 30 days. And then, there was a couple more weeks of editing and et cetera, et cetera. But it's just, again, I wanted to get this message out beyond what I could do in workshops. And it's just explain Ho'oponopono at deeper levels. I mean, if you look up neuroplasticity, for example, we can change our brains, we can rewire our brains, and we can do it intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
So I explain how that works and how Ho'oponopono starts to strengthen the love, humility, compassion, and gratitude neurons. And as those get stronger, the fear, frustration, la da 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 ding dang gets weaker. And so we start to build that stronger sense of self. We start to notice our self-esteem is getting higher, our self-worth, and then just explaining how to use it,
right?
In daily life, basically.
When my first book came out, I was getting all these great reviews, and then I get this one negative review, and it was like, I so focused on that one negative review. I'm like, well, I need to respond to this person and just tell them, and I finally said, you know what, I'm not even going to respond because I don't want to give them the satisfaction of knowing that they affected me in some way.
Right.
And, now I've over the last 8 years, I've helped publish, 30 some books. A lot of them are my own, a lot of them I helped others. And I always tell people the same thing. Don't respond to the negative. Focus on the positive. And the funny thing is that when you do that, your whole life changes.
Yeah.
And people do it on social media too. They look at this one negative aspect and forget about the 100 positive aspects. And I'm like, why?
Yeah. Same thing in reviews, right?
Yeah, it's horrible. It's just, there's always going to be somebody out there, some negative Nancy out there that's going to ruin, something for you if you dwell on it. If you don't worry about it, then it's just there.
Let it go.
Yeah.
And that was another piece that prompted me to write it, because I do a lot of pondering and I was thinking, let it go. Everybody says, let it go, just let it go, and you're having a problem or whatever. It doesn't matter the severity.
Right.
And it's like, well, okay, how do you let it go? Everybody tells us to do it, but nobody tells us how. And so for myself, I learned that Ho'oponopono was that gateway to allow me to let things go.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it, when you start repeating it, it brings you into the moment, right? And so whatever we're upset about is in the past. We can't do anything about it anyway,
right,
except figure out what it was, learn the lesson from it. And if we need to, make apologies and make it right, make it pono. In Hawaiian, that's pono means, they've simplified it to be right or make right. But when you delve into it a little deeper, it actually means to be at one with everyone and everything. It's to be pono. And so that's where I came up with our website is getpono.com. So get right and do it now,
Yeah.
No hurry, but
too many people live in the past. And dwell in the past, and release that baggage, just move forward. And I look at some of the things that I've done in the past. I've owned multiple businesses. I had a cleaning business for way too long, but I learned marketing. I learned web design. I learned all the stuff that I do now that I teach others. I learned having that business. Do I regret having that business? Sometimes I do, but it taught me a lot of valuable lessons that, and people were like, well, wait a minute, you were a carpet cleaner, now you're a marketer. How's that? That's like a total 180. Yeah. But, and I used to, when I first started the coaching, I I didn't even want to tell anybody that I had this carpet cleaning business because, people are always giving me the same crap. And after a while, I just embraced it.
Right.
And I just said, yeah, just bring the past forward and serve it up to people. And people were like, oh, okay, no problem. Great. Can I hire you? Yeah. And so the moment that I wasn't ashamed anymore of the past and just moved forward, people were accepting.
It's speak our truth, right? Because it's undeniable.
Right.
You can't argue with it. It's mine. You may not agree with it. You may not like some of it, but I can't change it.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of in a similar world. I often feel like I've got one foot in one world and another. My job is with one of the world's largest high-tech industries, and so I'm in that corporate structure for 8 hours a day. And then I come out of that and I'm a hippie in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And preaching, teaching, whatever. And I don't consider myself preacher or teacher. I show you, I'm from Missouri, right? The show me state.
Mm-hmm.
So my whole kuleana is to show people how it works and, explain it that way. And I always have a disclaimer, right? Don't take anything I say as gospel.
Right.
Just hear it. You either resonate with it or you won't. And if you need to do your own research, because most of mine comes from Facebook. And go from there. And what I've learned is, we all know truth
mm-hmm.
in an instant, right? But the way society is and environmentally and how we were all raised, we're taught to not trust that truth that we feel within us. And so if we feel it, then we got to question it.
Right.
Well, I don't know about that. It feels right, but everybody else is saying no. It's not a good idea. And so I went through a period of time where if somebody said, no, it's not a good idea, I immediately went out and did it.
Mm-hmm.
And it always ended up being a blessing because
right.
I just knew. And, you talk a lot on your show, podcast about entrepreneurs and et cetera. And one of my questions is, well, what holds them back?
Right.
And it's fear.
Fear.
And that's what held me back from writing that original book for 20 years. Who am I to write a book?
Mm-hmm.
What will people think? What if they don't like it? Out of bing bang, it just goes around and around. Yeah. And so I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. How did I create that for myself and why? And, and the way I grew up, I was never allowed to express anger in the household. So I had to stuff a lot of it. And so as I go through life, one little trigger for anger and suddenly it's a firestorm.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. There's no way you could be that mad about dropping a bottle cap or something, right? But it opens that gate and then that stuff that we've been repressing comes out. And I believe that's the same with our illnesses. Ho'oponopono is, I had 30 years of chronic back pain, and when I understood the cause of it, it healed in an instant.
Wow.
And essentially, I had a torn medial meniscus in my knee a couple of years ago, and they kept wanting to do surgery, and I kept postponing it. And 6 months later, it was healed, and I didn't need the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so, seeing enough of those kinds of situations, I've come to believe that for any physical ailment we have, there's an emotional component.
Right.
And when we heal that emotional component, the physical heals. And it keeps proving true over and over to me. So I get stronger and stronger in that belief.
Well, for a lot of entrepreneurs, it starts with fear, and then that leads to stress, and that stress leads to, all kinds of bad things happening to your body.
Yeah.
And so if you can eliminate the stress and overcome the fear, your body's going to be so much healthier. But
yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs, they come up with all kinds of excuses why they can't do something, and it comes down to that fear. Well,
Right.
I don't have enough money. what if I'm super successful and people want to then borrow money from me, or and they're coming up with these scenarios that haven't even happened yet.
Right. And so, yeah, it stops them. We have some friends that are wanting to open like a tea bar, and it's a passion, they say, and they've been at it for 4 or 5 years that I know of. And it's like, dude, they got all their ducks in a row, right? They got the bank account, the business name, all that, and they're not doing it. And all I can come up with is what's holding them back is some kind of fear. And my wife was talking to one of them the other day, and she finally got frustrated and kind of started giving him a what for, because everything she brought up, he had an excuse for.
Right.
And it's like, well, do you want to open this or not? And so, yeah, we're talking with them, and we may do some oponopono talk story and help them understand how they're stopping themselves.
Yeah. The two biggest ones that I hear all the time are, it's not the right time, or what was the other one? I just had it on the tip of my tongue, but that one right there, that it's not, or it has to be perfect before I get started.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, if all my stuff was perfect, none of it would ever get out. It just, and if you look at Apple, you look at Microsoft, you look at Samsung, they put out these phones, they put out these computers, they're not perfect. You get updates constantly.
Yeah.
We have a new version, update it now. And it's supposed to correct all the mistakes in the last version, which never does. So it's never
like, yeah, dude, why didn't you get it right the first time?
Right. So if you're going to wait for perfect, you're going to be very old till you start.
Yeah. You'll never start.
You never
right?
start. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just the whole waiting thing. It's just, oh, now's not the right time. Now, when is the right time?
Yeah.
I
heard a mentor one time say, well, when would now be a good time to get started on
that? Yeah. You have the money to invest. You have the means, but yet you're scared.
Yeah. That's that simple. And there's I call them hidden fears. We have a lot of fears we don't even know are there. And I go to a therapist fairly regular, similar to Brett, but she doesn't call herself a hypnotherapist, but her process helps you get into your unconscious mind. And that's where all those memories are residing, right? If we understand our bodies have 3 minds, you could say: conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the superconscious mind. The conscious mind is what we present to the world. In Hawaiian, it's called the uhane. And they, we can't remember what we had for breakfast. The unconscious mind is our, I'm starting to lose track of English and Hawaiian, Pili, but our unconscious. And that remembers everything from the beginning of time. That's our connection to source. And then the superconscious mind is that, source connection. So, Ho'oponopono, hypnotherapy, these kind of modalities allow that unconscious mind to come up, and so we can communicate with it consciously. And so I'm going through some medical stuff now, and so I started seeing her again, because I know that whatever's going on for me is fear based, but I don't feel fear. I do Ho'oponopono all the time, and I meditate like many times a day. And it's like, okay, this is weird because this is showing up, but I don't know where the fear is. Well, lo and behold, I go to her and find, like, the first couple of visits, there's one big one that was when I was 13 years old, a situation with my father. And the fact that I couldn't express my anger, what happened was I learned how to take my dad's anger on and own it, right? And even though it's not mine, it's still within my unconscious,
right,
within my cellular structure. And so by able to, I'm sorry that I took that on. Please forgive me for hanging on to it for so long, because it wasn't mine. It's not serving me. Thank you for letting it go. Thank you for teaching me these lessons. I love you, right? And that's essentially how it works. And I always tell people, it's like, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. How did I create this for myself, and why? because nobody else did it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we get into stuff at early ages and things like that, and it gets a little trickier. But the bottom line is that today I'm responsible for my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not serving me well, then I want to dig down and find out where that started and how did I create that? Because I had a part in it.
Right.
Yeah. And when
I was watching one of your videos where you were talking about fear of snakes, and a lot of people have fear of snakes, but what's funny is a lot of you know, people I know have fear of spiders, and these things can be really tiny, and they're jumping up. You know, people are jumping up on beds and
I know.
they don't want to get attacked by this little tiny thing, and it's like, yeah, it's going to eat you.
It can't bite you in the first place, right?
Yeah, it's
like Daddy Longlegs.
But yeah, you know, I was afraid of snakes for a long time too, and it's I always harken back to Indiana Jones, where, you know, he's in the temple that where's the Ark of the Covenant, and he looks down and he goes, snakes, why did it have to be snakes? You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's imprinted on everybody's mind when they look at snakes now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, those are one of my favorite movies, that series. You know, and I don't know, in that interview with that was my daughter that we were working through that with. I think I can only come back to the Adam and Eve story is where's the origin of the fear of snakes?
Yeah.
And I don't know where it comes from. Now I don't need to anymore, you know, it's just interesting how we take on that kind of thing, right? And we don't know we're doing it. And so much of our behaviors today is a reflection of our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're my wife and I, Laura, we play all the time. We let our inner childs out. We've learned to be able to do that because, you know, if you look at a baby or a young child, they can't talk yet. They're just joy, right? Because they don't know any better. So when we start growing up, that starts to go away because we have to be responsible. We have to be accountable. We have to be blah, 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 bling, bang.
Yeah.
It's much easier just being happy.
Yeah. So then you came up with the sequel, Magic Words and the 12 Steps.
And the magic word, it's interesting. We were talking earlier about, you know, the negative comments or whatever. And there were a few when the magic words came out that Christians don't like the word magic. Right? Yeah. It's all automatically evil. And
yeah, there was a big uproar when Harry Potter came out and they thought the whole thing. I'm like, just watch the movie.
Well, yeah, I'm like, okay, I can't shove it down your throat. I'm not here to do that, you know, and I have a 3-strike rule, kind of like what you have when you're, you know, you don't have certain clients and people will come and want to talk story and do some oponopono work. And the third time they come back saying the same story and I explain, they say, I know. I was like, dude, this third time, either change what you're doing or don't come tell me about it anymore. Because you're not, yeah, you're not helping yourself. But we wrote the magic words in the 12 steps. Yeah, Laura's right here too. I don't know if. And she is part of that. We're both came from a background of alcoholism and have been sober for 26 years, something like that. And when we both remembered that when we were first in AA, when we first read the big book, it was like, dude, this is like, why is this not for everybody? Why do you have to be an alcoholic to read this? And I remember 20 years ago saying, I want to bring this into the public and bring it into mainstream because it doesn't need to be hidden behind the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous or some other 12-step group.
Right.
So I realized when I started to better understand Ho'oponopono, when you combine that with those 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's a really powerful eye opener. And so I wrote the book, and we, you know, in our research and just life, basically our own experiences, but it's kind of like everybody's, I don't want to say everybody's addicted to something, even though they are. But, you know, there's, you know, some people who can't leave their cell phone alone. Some people are addicted to Facebook, you know, and we check our bank accounts all the time, knowing that it's going to go broke. So we talk about the lack mentality and how do you get out of that? Because as long as you're saying debt, I don't want to be in debt, your unconscious hears debt, so it makes it happen. It keeps you in debt.
Right.
So bringing Ho'oponopono into the 12 steps, and then taking the 12 steps and, you know, taking the alcohol out of it, if you will. And that was the goal for that book. And we've seen some really powerful results. We've had a few people tell us that it was a life changer for them. And we've seen one example of that just in front of our eyes. She read the book, got in a tough situation, and you could tell that she was using the principles that were outlined within that to ease the situation and not turn it into a tornado.
Right. You know, and for all the listeners, I want you to understand that, you know, what Jon did was, you know, repurpose something from another industry and incorporate it into something that he's doing now to make both concepts more powerful. And if you can do that, if you can understand, you know, different markets and demographics and ideas and combine them, you're going to have something so powerful that people are just going to want to buy it.
Yeah. And I think you've talked about that with some of your other guests, how to branch out with that. And, you know, I think, I don't know, listening to your podcast, it came to me that one of the things I'm thinking about maybe for the next book is the magic words in the entrepreneur. Because I don't know how your vetting process, but you and Mandy and even Ron, Ron Anspach, you're all very selective about your clients.
Yeah.
And so my thinking is that, okay, the ones that you don't want to take on, why not? I don't want an answer, but I'm asking myself that. And maybe this is a place where we can help them, because my guess is that they have those excuses you were talking about earlier, and you just don't have time to deal with it and babysit.
Right.
So maybe if they can start to learn Ho'oponopono and start to heal their fears and their insecurities, whatever's causing them to not afford it, you know, then it could be another, I mean, because let's face it, we're all in the service industry.
Yeah.
We're here to serve, and however we can help other people out is how we want to do it.
You know, and sometimes it's disguised as fear, but misunderstanding is one of those things where, you know, if you really don't understand something, you're not going to want to jump into it. And so, you know, maybe you're not fearful. It comes off as fearful, but maybe you're just not understanding the concept. And so it's foreign to you. But you know, I think that's why a lot of people, they miss opportunities. You know, they can't say yes to something because they don't understand it fully. And then they regret it and they'll go, damn it, I could have made $1 million on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, but then sometimes you don't understand it, but you'll do it anyway. Yeah. And that's, you know, some of that's part of where that fear piece comes in. Right. You know, and I don't know, one of the things that came to me also about entrepreneur, I would say, ask yourself 2 questions. Why are you doing it? But are you doing it for the money? Are you chasing the dollar? Or you want to get rich? Or are you doing it because it's a good thing to do and it's a service for people that's going to help them? Is it coming from your back pocket or is it coming from your heart? And, you know, I've learned over the years in my own life that when you follow your heart, the money takes care of itself. And the more I chased the dollar, the further behind I got. So I think a lot of people have a grandiose idea that, you know, it used to be, if you own a business, you're rich. Right. It's simply not so. And it's the same thing for a lot of entrepreneurs. It doesn't make you wealthy or famous. It just, you know, it's a freedom of living the way you want to. Right.
And the thing is that, and you said this early on in the interview, is you're the hippie from Hawaii. You know, you're not putting on airs. You're not standing next to your jet. You don't have a Lamborghini, you know, but there's a lot of what I call shiny object salesmen out there that, you know, are pushing products, you know, standing in front of their sports car or their luxury home, and all they care about is your money. They don't have a heart. Their heart's not in it. They just want your wallet.
Yeah. You know, and it's what is it, dichotomy? Is that the right word? That these guys go out and work, what, 12, 15-hour days and make all this money and have this big fancy house and can't enjoy it.
Right.
They're never there. They're so busy creating it and making it happen. But oh my gosh, it looks good from across the street. What will the neighbors think?
Yeah.
You know,
and here you are on the big island of Hawaii and just enjoying life.
Yeah. You know, I went through that for myself. Is like my dream car was always a Mercedes-Benz 500 SL AMX, right?
Mm-hmm.
A $250,000 sports car. And I started thinking about it one day and it's like, well, dude, you can't do that. That's pretty pretentious, isn't it? You're running around the planet teaching love, humility, compassion, and gratitude and driving a Mercedes. Why don't you go be friends with one of these preachers or, you know? So now I drive a 2011 Honda Accord. Yay.
You know, and the thing is that, you know, I enjoy cars just like everybody else, but
yeah,
you know, I always understood that, you know, a car is one of the worst investments you can ever own.
right.
And so I always buy a used something or other. And, you know, and my very first car was a Ford Pinto, you know, and people laugh and I'm like, hey, it got me from point A to point B. I didn't care what I looked like.
And it didn't cost much to get you there either, did it? Yeah.
So, you know, I don't care what you drive. I don't care what you fly in. I care how you show up.
That's it.
And I think that's what most people in life, you know, care about. How are you going to show up? How are you going to live your life? And, you know, how are you going to help other people do the same?
Yeah.
So.
And just, you know, again, come back to, I just joined the bandwagon, right? Truth and authenticity, just be real.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wasn't taught that. I was always a scared little boy. And my first thought was, what will people think of me? And so it took me actually a few years really to get to the point of what other people think of me is none of my business.
Right.
And there's a lot of freedom that comes with that. And there's still days when, you know, it pops up, but you just be yourself. And, you know, the people that like me do, and the ones that don't, well, cool. I don't like you either. So trash takes itself out, right?
How do people who like you find you?
Well, Amazon, the books are on Amazon, The Magic Words and The Magic Words in the 12 Steps. And the website is getpono, getpono.com. You can see blurbs about the book and also have a free download. We based the Magic Words in the 12 Steps on Alcoholics Anonymous original 1937 manuscript for their big book because it's in the public domain.
Right.
And also because they made a lot of changes in that book over the years and it's softened up, and I think they hurt the program by doing that. So going back to the original, and that's you can get a free download of that on the website, companion book, if you will.
Well, society has gotten soft, so they have to soften the rules.
Yeah, and that's too bad. It's getting worse. I'm sure I offended somebody today.
That's usually my goal. I have to offend somebody.
Yeah. It's like, okay. And then my thing is like, okay, well, why are you offended? Let's look into that.
People are like, hey, Rob, didn't you ever read that book, How to Influence People? And I'm like, yeah, but I have books that do the opposite of that. And they're just like, what?
I don't want to win, friends. I got enough.
I just know. So
yeah,
this was great, Jon. And for all the listeners out there, please go to Jon's website, getpono.com, buy his books, learn more about understanding, you know, Ho'oponopono and, you know, just have a good life. So
embrace it.
Yeah. So thanks, Sue. Yeah. See, I mess up sometimes on these podcasts. That's okay. But
that's all.
Yeah, there you go. So we'll see you on the next episode.
All right.